This is Maple Street, a typical street with typical houses like any other you'd find in suburbia. Meet John, a delivery driver. John knew this route like the back of his hand. Every house, every turn, every bump in the road, nothing was out of the ordinary. Until one day, it wasn't. John started his route like any other day. He turned onto Maple Street. But something was off. Something felt different. The houses looked unfamiliar. The trees seemed out of place. And the street. It ended in a dense forest. A forest that wasn't there yesterday. John's heart pounded in his chest. His breath caught in his throat. He rubbed his eyes, convinced he was imagining things. He slammed the van into reverse. Tires screeched. He sped back the way he came. He burst into the local diner, a safe haven on his usual route. He told his story. A story met with disbelief and laughter, but John knew what he saw. He wasn't crazy, was he? Maple Street. It was the kind of street that was easy to forget. Not dangerous, not particularly exciting, just a normal, quiet street. The kind you see in every town in America. Kids played on the sidewalks on sunny days, neighbors chatted over white picket fences. It was the picture of normalcy. John had been delivering packages on Maple Street for 5 years. 5 years of the same routine. 5 years of knowing every house number, every dog's name, every crack in the pavement. He knew Mrs. Henderson at number 12 always ordered her groceries online. And that Mr. Davis at number 23 would only answer the door for his afternoon tea delivery. It was a predictable routine, a comforting one. But on this day, something was off. The air felt different, heavy, still, like the moment of silence before a storm. The houses, usually so familiar, seemed strange, foreign. It was as if someone had replaced them overnight with replicas. He blinked, trying to clear his vision, to shake off the feeling that something was wrong, terribly wrong. John's foot hovered over the brake, unsure of what he was seeing or what to do next. "It's gone! The whole street! It's just gone!" John gasped, his words tumbling out in a torrent of confusion and fear. The laughter in the diner died down. The patrons, used to John's friendly banter, looked at him with concern. "What are you talking about, Johnny boy? What's gone?" The burly truck driver Frank asked, a skeptical frown on his face. "Maple Street," John choked out. "It's just different. It's not Maple Street anymore." John sat in his van, engine idling, staring at the wall of trees that had seemingly sprouted overnight. His phone felt heavy in his hand. Who would believe this? What would he even say? "Honey, you're running late. Everything okay?" His wife's voice, usually a source of comfort, sounded tinny and far away. "Yeah, traffic," he managed, his voice cracking. He couldn't tell her, not yet. Not until he knew what he was dealing with. He stepped out of the van, the smell of pine needles and damp earth hitting him like a physical blow. The forest was eerily silent, save for the chirping of unseen birds and the rustle of leaves in the wind. As he approached the tree line, something glinted in the dappled sunlight filtering through the canopy. A street sign, half hidden by overgrown vines, its once bright paint faded and peeling. Maple Street. Relief, sharp and sudden, washed over him. He wasn't crazy, he hadn't imagined it. He scrambled back into the van, slamming the door behind him, and threw it into reverse. He backed up until he was a safe distance from the trees, his heart still pounding in his chest. He turned the van around and slowly drove back down the street, his eyes scanning the houses, the lawns, the sidewalks, searching for any sign of the forest, for any indication that the last few minutes had actually happened. He burst back into the diner, a whirlwind of breathless explanations and frantic gestures. The diner patrons, their curiosity piqued, listened with a mixture of amusement and concern as John recounted his experience. A forest? The young waitress Sarah breathed, her eyes wide with fascination. Just appeared out of nowhere? Like it was never supposed to be there, John whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion, or like it was always there, and the street just forgot. The next morning John awoke with a knot of dread in his stomach. The previous day's events played on a loop in his mind. He stepped onto his porch, expecting to see the familiar sight of Maple Street. What he saw instead made his blood run cold. The houses weren't just different, they were ancient, dilapidated. Boarded-up windows stared back at him like vacant eyes. He picked up his newspaper, the paper limp and damp in his hand. The date confirmed his worst fears. It was still May 24th, but this wasn't Maple Street, not anymore. He drove to the diner, a sense of urgency propelling him forward. The diner was abuzz with activity, the usual morning chatter replaced with hushed whispers and anxious glances. John took a seat at the counter, his arrival met with a palpable silence. He could feel their eyes on him, their curiosity mixed with a healthy dose of fear. John, Sarah, the waitress, her voice barely a whisper. They say it's true, that Mrs. Henderson. She's gone missing. John's breath caught in his throat. Missing? How could that be? He had just seen her yesterday, hadn't he? Section 3, Day 3, The Unveiling of the Unthinkable. The third morning dawned with a thick, cloying fog that clung to Maple Street like a shroud. The air was heavy, almost suffocating, as if the fog itself was alive, wrapping its tendrils around everything it touched. John could barely see his hand in front of his face. The fog was so dense that it seemed to swallow up all light, leaving him in a world of gray shadows. He moved cautiously down the street, his footsteps muffled by the thick air, his senses on high alert. Every sound was amplified, every shadow seemed to move, and the silence was almost deafening. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the sound of his own breathing. Each breath he took felt like it echoed in the emptiness around him, a constant reminder of his isolation. And then he saw it, a shape, a shadow, something that didn't belong in the fog, or rather, he saw what wasn't there. The familiar landmarks, the houses, the trees, everything he knew was missing. The houses, the trees, the entire street, gone. In their place was an eerie emptiness that stretched out endlessly. In their place, a vast, empty field stretched out before him. The fog rolled over the field like a ghostly sea, hiding whatever lay beyond. And in the middle of that field, a lone headstone. It stood out starkly against the fog, a solitary marker in an otherwise featureless landscape. He stumbled towards it, his heart pounding in his ears. Each step felt like a journey, the fog resisting his every move. The inscription, barely visible through the fog, sent a chill down his spine. It was a name he recognized, a name that shouldn't be there. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut, leaving him breathless and terrified. Section 4, The Delivery Driver's Dilemma. Here lies Maple Street, it read, lost to the mists of time. John staggered back, his mind reeling. What was happening? Was he going crazy? He raced back to his house, his sanctuary, his haven. But even within its familiar walls, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. He had to tell someone. He had to do something. But who would believe him? Who could he possibly call? The phone rang and rang, each unanswered tone a hammer blow to his sanity. He was alone, trapped in a nightmare that was only just beginning. Section 1. The Town in Fear. The disappearance of Maple Street was no longer a local secret. News vans crowded what was once a quiet cul-de-sac. Reporters, hungry for a story, bombarded the residents with questions. Theories, each more outlandish than the last, spread like wildfire. Fear, once a whisper, now echoed through the town. Sleep became a luxury few could afford. Children, their imaginations fueled by whispered tales, drew monsters hiding in their closets, lurking under their beds. The diner, usually a place of comfort and familiarity, transformed into a breeding ground for speculation. Conspiracy theories ran rampant. Government experiments, alien abductions, interdimensional portals. Some delved into ancient folklore, whispering about cursed land, restless spirits, and gateways to forgotten realms. Each theory, more bizarre than the last, only deepened the mystery. The truth, it seemed, was more elusive than ever. Grainy security footage from a nearby house surfaced, adding fuel to the fire. A shadowy figure, moving with unnatural speed, flickered across the screen. Was it a trick of the light? A figment of an overactive imagination? Or something more sinister? Reports of strange occurrences in other parts of town began to surface. Animals disappeared. Objects moved on their own. The once peaceful community was now gripped by an invisible terror, a creeping dread that something was terribly, terribly wrong. John, consumed by guilt and a thirst for answers, threw himself into his own investigation. He scoured old maps, interviewed longtime residents, and chased down every lead. He visited the local library, his fingers tracing the faded ink of historical records, searching for any mention of similar events. He spoke to the town's oldest resident, a woman whose memory stretched back generations, hoping to unearth a forgotten legend, a buried truth. Each dead end, each unanswered question only fueled his determination. He wouldn't rest until he uncovered the truth about Maple Street, no matter the cost. John's investigation led him deep into the town's archives. He spent hours poring over fragile documents, searching for any mention of Maple Street's strange behavior. He found a hand-drawn map dated back to the 1800s. The area that now housed Maple Street was blank, marked only by a strange symbol, a spiral within a circle. A handwritten journal passed down through generations of the town's founding family mentioned the area as the Shifting Lands. Entries spoke of homesteads vanishing overnight, of compasses spinning wildly, of a perpetual fog that clung to the earth. John felt a chill run down his spine. These weren't just stories, this was history repeating itself. But why, and how? Driven by a need to understand, John sought out the town's oldest resident, a Native American man named Thomas, who lived a solitary life on the outskirts of town. Thomas listened patiently to John's story, his dark eyes reflecting a depth of knowledge that belied his years. "The land, it breathes," Thomas finally said, his voice low and gravelly. He pointed to a symbol carved into the armrest of his chair, the spiral within a circle. "Some places," he continued, "are where the veil between worlds wears thin." He explained that the area had always been considered sacred, a place where the boundaries between realities blurred. The news of John's discoveries spread through the town like wildfire, igniting a firestorm of controversy. Some dismissed it as superstitious nonsense. Others, their fear outweighing their skepticism, demanded answers, action, protection. The once peaceful community was now fractured, divided by fear and mistrust. The empty space where Maple Street once stood became a constant, unsettling reminder of their vulnerability. John found himself caught in the middle, the weight of their fear a heavy burden on his shoulders. He knew he couldn't ignore the truth, but could he convince anyone else before it was too late? The sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the empty field. The air was thick with an eerie stillness, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The once vibrant colors of the day were now muted, giving the landscape a ghostly appearance. This was where Maple Street had once stood, bustling with life and activity. John felt a familiar pull, a sense of dread mixed with an unsettling curiosity. He took a deep breath and stepped forward, his hand instinctively reaching for the compass in his pocket. The compass, a gift from his late grandfather, had always been a source of comfort, but now it felt like a weight pulling him into the unknown. As he crossed the invisible boundary, the needle spun wildly, just as Thomas had warned him. The air grew heavy, the light dimming as if a storm was approaching. The familiar sounds of the town behind him faded, replaced by a silence so profound it was almost deafening. The silence was not just an absence of sound, but a presence in itself, pressing down on him from all sides. He turned back, expecting to see the worried faces of his neighbors, the flashing lights of police cars, anything familiar. But the town was gone. In its place was an endless expanse of emptiness, stretching out as far as the eye could see. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. He was truly alone. In its place, an impenetrable wall of fog. John was alone. The fog seemed to pulse with a life of its own, swirling and shifting as if it were watching him. He felt a chill run down his spine, the weight of his decision settling heavily on his shoulders. There was no turning back now. He had to move forward, into the unknown. The fog rolled in like a wave, swallowing the last vestiges of the familiar. The streetlights, one by one, sputtered and died, leaving John in a darkness so complete it felt like a physical presence. His flashlight, a feeble beacon in the swirling gray abyss, cast grotesque shadows that danced and writhed around him. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back, to run, to escape, but his feet, as if guided by an unseen force, carried him deeper into the heart of the mystery. The compass in his hand spun erratically, its needle no longer a guide but a mockery of direction. And then, through the swirling mist, a shape emerged. A familiar shape. The street sign. Maple Street. But this was not the Maple Street he knew. The houses, though familiar in their architecture, were subtly wrong. Windows were too large, doors too small, roofs tilted at impossible angles. The air thrummed with an unseen energy. A low hum that vibrated in his teeth. He reached out, his hand trembling, and touched the wall of the nearest house. It was cold, unnaturally smooth, like polished stone. He shone his flashlight through a window, the beam cutting through the dust-filled interior. The room was empty, devoid of furniture, yet strangely expectant, as if waiting for occupants who would never arrive. A wave of dizziness washed over him, a sudden disorientation that made his stomach churn. This was not real. It couldn't be. He turned and ran, his footsteps echoing on the silent street. The night was thick with an unsettling quiet, broken only by the rhythmic pounding of his shoes against the pavement. Each step seemed to reverberate through the empty alleyways, amplifying his sense of isolation and fear. The streetlights flickered, casting long, distorted shadows that danced menacingly on the walls. He could feel the weight of the darkness pressing in on him, urging him to move faster, to escape the unseen terror that seemed to be closing in, the fog swirling around him like a living entity. It was thick, almost suffocating, wrapping around him like a shroud. He had to get out. He had to escape this place before it trapped him forever. He stumbled and fell, his hand grasping for purchase in the swirling mist. The ground was cold and unyielding, and the fog seemed to mock his efforts, swirling more densely around him. His breath came in ragged gasps, each one a struggle against the oppressive mist. He could feel the cold seeping into his bones, a chilling reminder of the danger he was in. His fingers closed around something solid, something cold, something out of place, a child's toy. A small wooden train, its paint chipped and faded. He clutched the toy to his chest, a sob escaping his lips. The fog, as if sensing his despair, began to recede, revealing nothing. No street, no houses. Just the empty field, bathed in the soft light of the rising sun. John sat there for a long time, the toy clutched tightly in his hand. The toy was a relic from a past he could barely remember, a fragment of a life that seemed so distant now. The field around him was eerily silent, the only sound the soft rustling of the grass in the morning breeze. He felt a profound sense of loss, not just for the street that had vanished, but for the innocence and simplicity that the toy represented. A silent testament to the street that was and would never be again. Life in the town would go on, but for John, the memory of Maple Street, the street that shifted and changed, the street that held secrets best left undisturbed, would forever be a haunting reminder of the thin veil that separates the known from the unknown. He knew that he would never be able to forget the night when reality seemed to bend and twist, when the familiar became strange and the safe became terrifying. The toy train in his hand was a symbol of that night, a tangible link to the mysteries that lay just beyond the edge of understanding. As the sun rose higher, casting long shadows across the field, John stood up, the toy still clutched in his hand. He walked away, leaving the field behind, but carrying the memory of that haunting night with him, a reminder of the fragile boundary between the world we know and the one that lies hidden in the shadows.